Hi guys, welcome. We are here today. We are Palm Desert High School alumni, graduating class of 2004, and we really benefited from the grief group that Tom put on for many years while we were there, and we're here today to tell you more about that and to share our experience with you. We're going to start introducing ourselves. My name is Ria Chorba. I was Ria Pescador back in high school. I am 34. And I'm so glad I had the experiences I did with Grief Group because I think it opened up my mind to seeing that talk therapy is helpful. It is not something to be ashamed of. And especially doing it together, there's really unity in numbers, for sure. Carolyn, take it away.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Sue. I was Carolyn Levine back in high school. I lived out of state. I live in Houston, Texas now. I did Grief Group for 2-3 years, somewhere in there, and it was so helpful in getting me through high school. I went through a lot of really traumatic things at that point, and it really helped me to open up to people and actually start talking about those things so that I can learn to process them. Callista?
Hi, I'm Callista Vasius. I was also Callista Vasius in high school, and class of 2004. Going to Grief Group, I think initially for me, I went to support some of my friends who are here with us today. And it was really great to connect on that level because I don't think that I loved my friends dearly and we could talk about anything, but I think that it really gave me an opportunity to talk to people on a deeper level than I knew how to communicate. Ashley?
I'm Ashley Medina. I was Ashley Schrader back in high school. I also now live out of state. I live in Georgia. I really appreciated Grief Group and having just an opportunity to have those intentional conversations. Sometimes, like, even though we have a great group of friends, it's hard to even know when and how to start those conversations when you're processing hard losses or you're going through a rough time. And so it was really helpful just to even have a space and a place to feel safe enough to start those conversations. And it even helped encourage me to continue doing that. And I was able to, because of my experience in Grief Group, I felt confident enough to go to counseling for a couple of years while I was in college and really finish working through a lot of those things.
Nice. So our first question we're going to throw out there, I'll say the question and answer it myself so you have some time to reflect on it, and then we'll pass it around the group. Is what was it that made you originally open up about the things you were dealing with? So for me, my reason that I went was I had a family member that had committed a lot of crimes against my family, and that was really hard to deal with, that someone within our home would be so destructive to our family. And going there and seeing that, even being 14, 15, there were peers that I may not have known as friends, but I knew them as acquaintances that had other real problems that may not have been just like mine, but their pain was pain just like mine. And I think that's what made me, because the first 2 times I don't even think I mentioned why I was going to Grief Group, because Tom was very sensitive to let you share that on your own. But after people started sharing, I have this problem, I have that problem, I think it was others sharing that gave me the opportunity to say, I want to share too.
I agree with you, Ria. I'll take it over. I was at Grief Group supporting my friends and hearing everybody speak. And it really, like, Tom was the nicest person in the world and just a calm, caring person who would give you the time to speak, and if you weren't ready to speak, there was no pressure to do it. So after attending a couple of grief groups, I felt like I wanted to open up as well, and really got the opportunity to share with a group of people, not just my friends who I was there with, but also people I hadn't really talked to at school, even though we'd seen each other around school. And that was really important, to feel like you had an opportunity to speak if you wanted to, but you weren't required to.
Yes, I'll jump in. I definitely agree with both Ria and Callista on this. I did go as well originally to support a friend who was going through some really hard things at the time. At the time, nothing was really particularly happening in my life. And then things started to escalate with some things in my life. Traumatic things happened. And I don't remember if I initially shared them, but by that point I had already discovered that this is absolutely a safe place. Like Callista had said, there's a lot of people in there, not just friends that you know, but people you've seen around high school that you wouldn't necessarily just walk up to and, share everything from your life with. But we've already kind of established that is a safe place to go ahead, talk about anything that you possibly need to talk about. And you're going to be heard, you're going to be listened to, you're going to be comforted, and you're going to be given that space to work through things.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what all of you ladies have said. I think for me, initially going was a little nerve-wracking because, you don't really know what you're walking into. And so, but just having that safe place, I think for me was really encouraging, and having the opportunity to share what was going on was really valuable.
Nice. I wanted to add one more thing that I think we'll all agree on. In grief group, it's a place that existed without cliques. You had your popular people, you had your band nerds, you had the dance team, and all of us fit into some category, and we really stayed in our bubble. In grief group, it's as if all of that fell away and we were just teenagers, that it didn't matter who your friends were. You could support somebody else and it was okay. You could see them in the hall the next day. You might wave, you might not. Didn't really matter. But in that 1 hour, we were all equal and there was no division. And that was a big deal for sure.
And Rhea, to add on to that,
yeah.
I just wanted to also say, everything that we shared in grief group stayed in grief group. That was one of Tom's first rules. That was the biggest rule. And we never saw anybody try to break that, to the point where we probably, if we didn't talk to that person on a normal basis anyways, we didn't talk to them outside of grief group, but it was okay.
Kind of had like an AANA type element to it, in that you speak to those people, and then outside of that, I don't say you don't know them, but you don't know them if you didn't already. Because it kind of kept that element of anonymity, I guess.
Definitely. So our next question is, what are some ways we can approach others to discuss their pain? I would say people have to be ready to talk about it. And we've mentioned that a few times. We may have gone a few times to grief group and not said anything. We were there to support, even though in heart of hearts, we may have been there for a deeper reason for ourselves. You cannot talk to anyone about their problems until they're ready to hear it and ready to accept it. So I think there's some rare moments we stumble across with our friends and family where we can be that listening ear. And I think it's being cognizant, looking for opportunities, but also not forcing them and just letting them flow naturally.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think helping people feel seen and heard is so important. Everybody is going through stuff. And sometimes that stuff is heavier than other times. And sometimes that stuff is good, but that doesn't mean that there isn't still stuff that comes with that good. Any types of changes and transitions, and especially in teenage years, there's so many changes and transitions that happen anyways, throw on top of their family and friends and high school in general. And just really, you have an opportunity to be that listening ear, and just sometimes sitting and saying nothing and being comfortable with silence is so important. Just sitting there and physically being with someone is showing amazing empathy sometimes. They don't necessarily need to hear you talk at them. They just need to know that they're seen and heard.
To build on kind of what Ashley said, to be that person that they can feel seen and heard with all the time will make them more comfortable to open up about things that they're needing to open up about with you. Even if, like she said, even with good things, even if I just want to call a friend, there are certain people I know that I can call with great news, but I also know that there are things that I'm going through that I need to talk about with, or need to just talk at, really. I can call them as well. So that's kind of the thing, is we have to be willing to be those people all the time.
Felicity, anything to add to that one?
Well, I think you guys really covered it. The thing that's sticking out to me is that whole being seen. So when you feel like someone's really seeing you, not just like a, hey, what's up, how's it going? but you know that hey, how's it going wasn't really an invitation to talk about everything. So when someone really sees you and they say, how are you doing? You don't feel like opening up. You know that person cares, and that you can bring up the conversation later on if you need to yourself. And then hopefully it's the feeling's mutual and everybody can talk to each other.
Well said. Our next question is, in your experience, does it help to show vulnerability? I am not the best linguist over here. To say that again so they can cut that part out. Okay. In your experience, does it help to show vulnerability in conversations to help others to open up about their pain?
100%. Absolutely. I think that's, all of us kind of share that's one of the reasons that we started opening up in grief group, is that there have been people who've been there perhaps a little bit longer than us who were already in there divulging very personal information, very hard information to share, and just completely laying it out there and being completely vulnerable with a lot of strangers, honestly. And yeah, definitely showing their vulnerability encouraged us to show ours and gave us a safe space to all do that in.
I think there's something special about grief group or other things like it, that sometimes you can be more vulnerable with strangers than you can be with your friends. And maybe it's because the heavy you bring to this room, you will not have to carry it with you into other conversations. Sometimes if you share something with a friend, though it's appropriate, they're going to ask you tomorrow about it, and the next day, and the next day, and you don't want that. You want to get it off your chest. You want someone to have heard you, and maybe you just don't want to have someone really close to you know it yet. And I think grief group allows you to see the vulnerability of strangers, and really you can open up in a different way.
Yeah, that's so true. I think for us as a group, because we were friends before we went into grief group, and we were good friends who could talk, I don't think that I felt like I couldn't share because you guys were there, but definitely there was an ease in talking to this group of people because we were all there for the same purpose, and we were all there to support each other. So going into a group where you might not necessarily know the people, but you know that that's everybody's purpose for being there, really goes a long way in being able to open yourself up and be vulnerable, and then close yourself back up again at the end of that conversation and go back on with your day.
Yeah. And even amongst friends, I think we would hear the struggles of our friends and still wouldn't bring it up outside of grief group unless that friend reached out and wanted to talk about it further. We really did hold that code of what stays, even if we knew the person personally, just to give them a healthy boundary and to know you can talk and it can just stay in the room.
Very true.
Yeah.
Okay, our next question. How can you be a friend to someone in grief?
Can I shoot it over to Carolyn if she's ready to answer that question? Because I think that she is a good person to talk to.
Just be that person. I think Callista touched on this earlier about how when you ask somebody, hey, how are you? They know that you're asking, hey, how are you? Not just, hey, how are you? I'm great. How are you? Be the person that actually, they would know that, I'm actually not having a great day today. Here's what's going on. Can I talk to you about this? Or that you can say, hey, I'm great. Here's what happened. This is awesome. Just be the kind of person that they know, the person in grief knows that they can always come to with anything. That really does help a lot.
I think sometimes when you're going through a very traumatic experience, if it's a death, if it's just a major life event, sometimes people are afraid to walk up to the person that is grieving. They don't know what to say. And sometimes that means you're around a lot of people and a lot of silence. And I think sometimes being a friend to someone in grief is being brave for you to say, I'm going to ask them how they're doing, even if it makes me feel uncomfortable, because this isn't about me. They need me. And if they would like to not have the conversation, I'll respect it. But I'm going to step out of my comfort zone and check in with them anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you're walking with a friend who you know, you may know or at least have some idea of what is going to help them. There are times when a friend needs to sit on your couch and eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's. There are times, Carolyn, your face. There are times when that is what is needed, or there are times when they want a break from carrying the weight of grief, and you can be that for them. There are times when they want to sit in silence and just exist, and there are times when they want to verbally talk it through. And I think some of that is being a little bit aware of yourself and of your surroundings and of the people that you're with, and kind of sensing what is appropriate in that moment and what they need. When you're walking through grief with somebody, sometimes it is not helpful to say, how can I help you? Because they are so overwhelmed by the burden and the emotion that they are feeling, that it's a, can I do XYZ, and something that you think would help them? Can I bring you a meal? Can I grab Starbucks for you? Or can we go for a walk, or something specific, because they can process the specific. But when you're on a pain and someone says, oh, let me know if I can help, that's not really super helpful. So I think being tangible and specific with things, sometimes if you don't know what to do or say, send them a card that just says, hey, I'm thinking about you. That is so encouraging to somebody who is going through something, just to know that there are people who are maybe physically distant, but still like emotionally with them.
Let me just add on to both what Rhea and Callista, or both what Rhea and Ashley said, excuse me. Sometimes they don't want to talk about it. If it's a friend that you're, friend or family member, somebody you already know, and you know they're going through some heavy stuff, sometimes they just don't want to exist in that place right now. Sometimes they just want to go out to Dave and Buster's and have a good time, or go out and have a meal and just laugh at stupid things. So again, just knowing kind of where they're at, what they need. And if they tell you they absolutely just, I just want to go out and have a good time, or I want to go to the movies or something. Sometimes that's better than actually sitting down and having one of those deep conversations, because that might be the escape that they need at the moment. They just want to feel normal sometimes. So
yeah, definitely. Okay, next one. Is even just the gesture of making yourself, okay, try that one again. Words that come naturally don't when you're being recorded. Okay.
Homeowners insurance.
Thankfully, that is not a word I have to say today, because I cannot say that word. Even after going to grief group, I was unable to say home owners insurance together in the same flow, even though I work for an insurance company. So
yes.
Okay, we're gonna try this again. Take seven, Harrison. Here we go. Is even the gesture of making yourself available at any time to talk with others enough to get some people to open up, even if it isn't right away?
I think that's a good gesture and maybe a starting point, but you don't just go, hey, if you ever want to talk, I'm here, and then never talk to that person again until they approach you. So, maybe say, hey, I'm here if you ever want to talk. How about we just go grab something to eat? Because like Carolyn said, maybe they're not ready for it, and maybe they just want to feel normal. So accepting somebody for all of who they are, including their grief, and letting them still just be, is really powerful, I think, for getting someone to open up, and having that open-ended offer of like, I'm here if you need to talk, but check in one way or another and let them know that you are there still.
You're more likely to open up to somebody that you're already familiar with and that you already know, and you already kind of, work through life together. So, if you're just somebody I barely know and you come up and say, hey, if you need to talk about this, I'm ready. I'm here for you. And you're like, okay, that's great, but I'm never going to speak to you. So no. But if, Callista were to, say, hey, I know things have been rough lately, but if you need to call, if you need to talk or anything, just let me know. I'm more likely to take her up on that offer at some point. So again, just be there, be ready. And again, let them feel normal if they want to. Just exist in life with them, and they'll come to you if and when they need to. And again, do keep checking in with them about things as well.
I think to what you're saying, Carolyn, it's having a constant presence with somebody that gives them it can help them then be ready to talk. Grief group, I think it was Thursdays that we had grief group.
That sounds right.
Okay, yay.
Once a week.
20 years later, I still got it. Okay. But you knew Thursdays at 11, you were going to have this opportunity to share, and having that dependability that Tom or different environment, different counselor, whatever it is, that person's going to be there. That's your opportunity to talk. That was helpful. But with friends, you have relationships, you're around them often. So when you're ready to open up, you can. Or if it's a group, just knowing it's going to reoccur. That's, you bank on it. You really do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that y'all are saying. I think part of it also is kind of going back to like saying, oh, I'm always here for you is helpful in that, oh, that's nice to know that someone's always here for me. But if you don't regularly show up and prove that you are someone that they can go to through your other actions and interactions with them and others around them, I think that goes a long way to being someone who can be approachable. If you're someone who just says, oh, call me anytime, and you're down and you never see them again, that doesn't help. But if you're someone who's regularly showing up in the lives of other people around them as well as them, it helps to make you feel like you're a safer person to open up to, and those words have more meaning than just a statement.
Definitely. So what are some of the ways in which you yourself have helped others or even yourself through grief?
I guess I'll speak on this first. Space. Allowing yourself the space to grieve, allowing others the space to grieve. I mean, it's not a comfortable place to be for yourself or anyone else. And a lot of times this world wants to push you past it. See the positive, think on the bright side, see the silver lining, all of that. And while those are good things, sometimes you just need to exist and allow yourself or allow others to exist in that place of grief for a little while. Don't wallow in it forever. You do have to come out of it sometimes, but allow yourself the time and the space to grieve, and allow that for others as well.
Yeah.
I think what Carolyn said, you definitely have to move through grief or it will continue to find you. For me, it was, I have to talk about what is going on. Other people, there may be other outlets. You find your outlet, but you get through it. To ignore it will not go away. It will come out in different ways in your life. You can even have repressed grief and pain from childhood that rears its ugly head as an adult. And you're like, oh, well, this is 30 years old. Thanks for showing up today. Or you deal with it. And I think that's how I've helped others, and try to tell myself, if you're depressed today, you acknowledge you are depressed. You do not hide that you are depressed, and you move through depression. Grief the same way. You keep going.
Yeah. And I think that kind of a quote that comes to mind for me is something that helps me is, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. So we live in this world where everybody wants to be happy-go-lucky all the time, and we're looking for, the bright light, but sometimes it's okay to not be okay. And you need to know what you're going to do for yourself, or if you see somebody that's not okay, how you can support them. And we get through it. It's a temporary being, but it's okay to not be okay.
Especially right now with coronavirus going on, where everybody's kind of existing in a place of, am I okay? Am I not okay? How do I feel today? How do I feel this hour? So definitely okay not to be okay right now.
You know what quote comes up for me, Callista? If you're going through hell, keep on going. And there's that country song, and I'm like, yes, it is right. Do not stay here. Keep moving.
Now I have the song stuck in my head, but thank you.
Yes, welcome. Mine too.
Planted that seed for the rest of the day.
Yes, thank you. We'll just keep on moving.
For me, I was able to, when I did counseling in college, I learned a lot of really helpful tools through journaling and different exercises and things like that really helped me process where I was feeling and where those feelings were coming from. A lot of, I think, handling grief is being aware of what you're actually feeling, because so many times you are feeling so many different things all at once. And so just actually naming what you are feeling and naming the things that could potentially be causing you to feel that, and saying this is everything and laying it out for me is so helpful. And I usually do that through writing. And that has been a really helpful tool that I have learned to use when I am processing grief and hard things, is just physically getting it all out through writing. And then the other thing that has significantly helped me would be my faith and prayer. Definitely helped me process all of my grief and such.
So Ashley, I have a question for you.
Oh, sure.
This is not on the list.
That's all right.
You seem really smart, so I'm going to ask you. When you're journaling and these emotions are coming out, are you ever surprised that what you thought was the problem was not what came out?
Oh, all the time. It's crazy. I don't know that I have a blank piece of paper around here, but I learned a thing where you fold a paper and like on the skinny part, you literally list all of your emotions, and then you fold those emotions over, and then you list everything that's going on that could possibly be causing whatever is happening, whether it's grief from your childhood or sudden changes, or right now COVID, or all of those things that are happening. And then you have to match which emotions are coming from which situations. And then you also have to say which situations you have control over and which ones you don't. Because a lot of times there are situations that you are handling that you have no control over. And so, but there is almost always one thing that you can choose, and you pick that thing and you fix it, or you work on it, or you step forward in it. Or if it's okay, I am feeling really overwhelmed about this specific grief right now, I'm going to do something that is going to help me move forward in that. I think that's a really important thing to be able to do. And that's something that you can do with somebody else verbally. If you're in a support team, that's kind of what you do when you're sitting in group. You're really talking through the situations and talking through your feelings. When you no longer have a great grief group, you have to figure out how to do it yourself. So that's just a tool that I've done, and it's been really helpful.
I think journaling is so important, Ashley. I just want to stick on it for one more second.
Oh, yeah.
Do you ever go back and reflect or see your growth in things you've written in the past?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I have journals from middle school and high school, aside from silly notes and fun things with friends and stuff. There really is a really good, I remember how I was feeling so overwhelmed by this situation, or so overwhelmed, or I thought that this feeling was never going to end. And wow, look at all the good that's come from it, or look at all of the change and the growth that has happened through these situations.
So Ashley, if someone has not journaled in the past, what are a few recommendations you would give them to get them started on that process? If they're like, this sounds like something I want to do, I'm just not quite sure how to start.
I mean, I started with writing a sentence a day, like literally just write a sentence. It could be something you're thankful for. It could be something that you're feeling, or it could be something you're frustrated with. It could be, hey, today I did this, and list your biggest accomplishment of the day. And then sometimes you can grow, say, okay, I'm going to write a page a day, or things like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be this intimidating thing, because really no one else is going to see it except you. You can burn them if you want. They're really just
might help sometimes. Some of those emotions go.
But they really are just for you. And so no one else is going to see it. You don't have to feel judgment if your handwriting is really bad or your spelling is awful. Half of y'all probably wouldn't be able to read mine even if you found them. But like, it's amazing to go back. I went back to one a couple of years ago when we were going through a crazy life transition, and just to see what has come out of that situation that we thought was horrendous and awful, and all of the amazing good that has come through that path, and walking that path and coming out of it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think journaling is a big self-help that we can give to kids, to ourselves, just to make them aware this is something you can do. If a group is not around, if a friend is not around, you can be self-sufficient to heal. And that is a great place to start.
One thing
one thing
I want to add to that. The one thing especially could be helpful for kids, teenagers, but also adults. There's so many like bullet journals, workbooks, those kinds of things that can kind of help you if you don't, if looking at a blank page in a blank journal just overwhelms and intimidates you and you don't quite know how to address that. Some of these other tools exist and they're so readily available now that you have so many options out there for, particular topics or, whatever it is.
So Calista, I'm going to ask you this one because I think you have some experience from your past job with it. Since we're talking about journaling, I know that there's a lot to be said with art therapy and how that can help all of us process emotions. Do you have anything you'd like to say if maybe someone's like, I'm more artistic than wordsy?
Yeah, actually, well, and just so everybody knows who's watching and might not be aware, I was at Safe House of the Desert, which is an emergency shelter for teens, for youth, 11 to 17-year-olds. And we had an amazing art therapy program there. They still have an amazing art therapy program there. I'm just not there. But it was the highlight of the week. They'd go 2 to 3 times a week into a classroom to be able to do art. And it was a great opportunity, especially kids when they first get there, they weren't sure and maybe they'd never done art before, or maybe they'd done art before and they didn't think they were any good at it. And they're like, well, I don't want to do art. And it was never forced, it was never pushed, but they were exposed to it and they were welcomed by the art director, who just was really amazing and would give them the tools that they needed to express themselves. And kids who would start the first week and not want to do any art, they would end up leaving the program going, can I take the art supplies home with me? Because I don't want to stop. And finding something that they had really enjoyed. And it was not about, drawing a perfect picture. It was about expressing yourself and using whatever tools were available to express yourself. And really asking difficult questions, or asking questions that maybe you just hadn't even thought of before, and then seeing where your expression took you. And that was really powerful.
Now, Calista, with Safe House in mind, things like Grief Group are wonderful when they are scheduled at school. I know Safe House has a program that they offer that has a texting component. Would you like to speak on that to let these kids know about that?
Yeah. So the What's Up Safe House app is actually really awesome. You can either download the app or just text the phone number, and you can go to safehouseofthedesert.com to get the information on the What's Up Safe House app. But what you're doing is you're texting with a trained counselor who's trained working with teens, and working with teens with issues of all different sizes, and they've heard pretty much everything before, I want to say. And even if they haven't, they've got some great advice on how to move forward, and they're great listeners. So the What's Up Safe House app is something that if you were sitting at home in the middle of the night, it's 24/7, and you can't sleep because there's something on your mind, you could just text them and they would text back, and it's totally anonymous and free.
And that can be the smallest thing to the biggest problem that they're going to listen to. They really take.
I would even say, like, if you were up because you have a test the next day and you can't sleep because of it, you could text and there was somebody to talk to. You didn't have to wake up your parents or, try to find a friend, but there was always somebody to talk to.
Perfect. So in your opinion, do you think that getting people to talk about their pain is key to moving forward with it?
Yes.
There we go. We answered it. Moving on.
Yes, there we go. Okay, no.
Sorry.
Well,
that was an obvious yes, I think, from the entire group. Ashley, thank you for saying the yes. But I think acknowledging the pain is key to moving through it. And the best way to acknowledge it sometimes is to say it out loud. Whether you're saying it to a group that's made for that, a friend you can trust, or you're just saying it to yourself, or like Ashley said, writing it down.
I think it helps that some people do process it differently. So the idea of, the only way to process it is through therapy, through a group, through this, through that, that's not true. There is not one way to process through grief. There's not one way to speak about it. So if speaking about it means just journaling to yourself and then burning those journals so no one ever sees them, that's still speaking about it. So do what feels right to you, not necessarily what, everybody is saying needs to get done or something like that.
I think we've said it a few times, you have to get the pain out, and you want to do that in a healthy way. And if that is talk, if that is journaling, if that's art, if it's exercise, we want to encourage our children because we have those now, to find healthy ways to express that, get that pain out so it doesn't stay in, because the pain will come out one way or the other. Either you let it out in a healthy way, or it will find its way out on its own. And that is never the best way. Often when you get upset about trivial things, it was never about that small little incident that just happened. It's always something deeper that just hasn't been dealt with. So if we had any advice to pass on to the future generation, I think it would definitely be deal with your shit now, because it will find you later. And it is never as nice the second time.
It doesn't just come out the same way later than it came out before. It comes out worse, nastier, harder, meaner, and in the most inopportune moments possible. So deal with it now.
It festers. If you leave it alone and you pretend like it's not there, it's like a wound that just is getting grosser and worse, and you're just pretending like it's not there. It is so much better to actually, even though it's painful, dig in there and clean it out the right way so that it can heal properly. That's physical pain, obviously, but emotional pain and grief is the same way. You have to find a way to express it. If it's screaming into a pillow, or if it's going for a run, or journaling, or talking in grief group, or praying, or whatever your way of pouring it out is, you have to find a way to do that, because otherwise it will just grow and get bigger and nastier, and then you will really end up in therapy or a hospital or something like that, because it will not be pretty when it comes out.
And emotional pain can become physical pain.
Yes.
I mean, this has been said by doctors for a long time that, extreme grief or loss that hasn't dealt with can manifest as cancer, 10, 15 years down the line. So the body has a way of protecting itself, but also eating away at itself. So to get out those emotions now helps your physical body be safer in the future.
There's literally a book called The Body Keeps the Score. So it literally, like Rhea said, doctors, researchers have discovered all sorts of, chronic health conditions and things like that actually might have some link to childhood traumas or things like that. So yes, you can't necessarily control everything that's going to happen to you in your life. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be some terrible things that are going to happen. And you don't necessarily always have control over them, but you do have control over how you process through those. So do it now. Don't put a Band-Aid over it, because when you take that Band-Aid off 15 years from now, it's not going to be so pretty.
Well, and I think I would like to add too is if it seems too big, if it seems like you can't handle it, there are professionals that can help. And if you go and you see someone or you go to a group and it's not the right thing for you, if it doesn't feel right, that doesn't mean it's not going to work. It just means you need to find a different person, group, thing to do, and just keep trying, because you'll find the right thing for you, and you'll be really able to explore things and go through it and with support.
There's no shame in therapy. There's absolutely no shame in therapy. I will freely admit I've gone out of the habit, but I need to go again, and I'm okay admitting that. And I know, it's okay to admit it. It's not a big deal. So, and if you, like Calista said, if you don't find the right therapist right away, it doesn't mean therapy doesn't work for me, this is the end. It means that relationship just wasn't right. So find somebody else, find the right relationship, and then you can, really start digging in.
And I think this lends itself to self-care. We tend to put ourselves last always when we deserve to be first, and our emotional state deserves to be dealt with so we can be the support for others. And in high school, it's your friends. As an adult, it's now your family that you need to be there for, and taking the time to help ourselves really ultimately helps those around us as well. Okay, our last question. Is there anything you would like to say to those who are dealing with something difficult who might be watching this? I'm like, wow, how do you get that into words?
Yeah.
I'll start. We'd like to save you, and we can't. Grief Group cannot save you. Your therapist cannot save you, but you can save you. And I found that out in my own journey, is that when you are willing to be the person that is there for you all along the way, and you are willing to be your hero, that is when you will set yourself free. And you will deal with more pain that will come, and you will know, I am capable and I can do this. But I would say to those people, know that you are your biggest advocate, and you need to be your biggest fan, because you can save you.
Thank you, Rhea.
Yeah.
That was great advice.
If someone doesn't cry, it's really not grief group.
Right. I'm like, now I'm gonna have a turn and cry, because it's good. It's good to cry. It's good to get out the emotions. I cry when I'm super happy, and I cry when I'm super sad, and probably for a lot of other emotions, there's just a lot of tears. And I even debated, do I wear mascara today or not? But this is Zoom, so there's mascara on, and I'll try not to smear it before the end of the day. Loving yourself, accepting and loving yourself in all of the parts of you. If there's something that you have done that has caused some kind of pain, you can still love yourself, and you can forgive yourself, and you can forgive those around you, because it's not just you. When something happens, it's never all on one person. And so we have to love ourselves, and accept ourselves, and accept those around us and those people that are important to us.
Calista, you said a really important word that I'm going to kind of echo on, because I think it's something that's really important in this process. Forgiveness, because there are a lot of times when you choose to not forgive someone, and it hurts you way more than it hurts anybody else. And so I just want to encourage you guys to forgive and let go, because you holding on to that is not good for you. And that doesn't mean, when you forgive someone, that doesn't mean that you let them come and hurt you again, or that you allow situations that you were in to repeat. But forgiving is letting go and choosing to let them have any more say over your emotions and your pain and in your life. And that is healthy to do. And that's okay to do. So give yourself permission to forgive, and know that that doesn't mean that what they did was not wrong, or that what the situation was by any means okay. But choosing to forgive is choosing to let go and say, you know what you did was wrong, but I'm choosing to let go of it. And I'm choosing to say, I forgive you. Because when we hold it on to ourselves, it just makes it so much worse and so much heavier and so much harder to carry. And also, in that, it's really part of loving yourself and loving others. We all make mistakes. And I know that I have hurt people most of the time unintentionally. I don't think most people go through life intending to hurt others. And sometimes situations, people make bad choices. We've all, I think, have made choices that we probably wouldn't go back and do again. And so I think being kind to yourself and offering forgiveness to others is huge in the grief process, and choosing to forgive others in that and forgive yourself is really important in healing.
I guess to expand on what Ashley said, this is a really hard question to answer, by the way. You have to forgive others, of course. And it doesn't necessarily need to be in a conversation. It doesn't need to be, Rhea, I know you never asked for this, but I forgive you. I don't even need to have that conversation with you. It can just be within myself. But also, to further expand on the issue of, forgiveness, you can cut out the toxicity in your life. You have the power, and you have the choices of who you want to and who you do not want to keep in your life. There are some people that do not deserve that. You can forgive them, but they don't deserve to be in your life, and they don't need to be. And that's something that I still struggle with today. There are certain people, and again, sometimes it has to be, sometimes it's even family or really close friends. But you just have to know, what? This person is not healthy for me, and I have to distance myself and not continue that relationship. And that's sometimes the best way that you can care for yourself. And
I think setting up healthy boundaries, Carolyn, is you're talking about setting up healthy boundaries for yourself with others and with yourself. You know, if you start talking really negatively about yourself in your own head, you have to say, no, that's not allowed. People can't talk about me that way. Not even me.
Yeah. Imagine if you think about the ways you speak to yourself. Would you say that to somebody else? Would you ever say the things that you say about yourself to one of your friends or your family members? You wouldn't do it. So don't let yourself do it either.
I think it's fair to say that all pain is real. Some people have these massive tragedies and we think, oh, they're really struggling. And some of us have smaller things. And we think, oh, well, my pain is nowhere near their pain. I don't deserve to receive the help. I don't deserve to talk it out. That's not true. It's like we all bleed red. All pain hurts. And if it's the smallest thing or the largest thing, it's irrelevant. You deserve to have your pain. You deserve to move through your pain and find help, however that is, for whatever the problem is. Sometimes in grief group, someone had catastrophic loss. Sometimes it was not catastrophic loss, but that person was still grieving. And that's so important to know that despite your problem, it is still relevant and important to work through it.
It's not a competition.
No. Don't compare.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the great thing about grief group was that everybody could share, and no matter what level of grief you were going through, it was respected, and you really got to be heard, and you got to go through that, and there were people there to support you. So that's one of the beauties of grief group, and I think something that taught me a lot for myself going forward and that I've used a lot in my adult life is it doesn't matter the size of your grief. We all grieve. We all go through different grief throughout our lives in different ways, and it's all worthy of, you're worthy of support.
And I would say just one last thing is I think goal setting is really important, especially if you're in a dark place right now and that is not where you want to stay, or you're in a, I'm not sure what to do with my life right now. You write it down of where you want to be, of what you want to do. And just verbalizing that and getting that out there in the universe is going to make a huge impact. And you can sometimes look back on those lists years later and go, wow, I checked off a lot of those boxes and I didn't even know it. So I think putting down on paper what you want to do helps guide your vision, because sometimes we lose sight of where we're going and we need to be refocused ourselves.
Yeah. And sometimes you can look at that list and go, hey, I don't want to be there anymore. And you make a new list.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you, ladies, for joining us today. And thank you, Tom, for being who you were in our lives, because you affected us, which affected our families, which, I mean, who knows how far the ripple of what Tom started went. I think it went big. There was a better word than big, but
you don't have it right now. Well, and I want to say, I ran into Tom. So we were class of 2004. It's been a long time since we've been in high school. And I ran into Tom a couple of years ago. And when I saw him, I didn't recognize him immediately, not because he'd even changed that much, but he knew who I was immediately. And I just saw him and I went, here is a familiar, warm and loving face. How do I know him? And it took me, you know, a little bit of time before I was like, oh, Tom, grief group. And I had forgotten that we had all gone to grief group. Like, it was kind of just something that was like, I'd forgotten a lot of high school. And it all kind of came back to me, and I started thinking about it. And I really thought a lot more about it since I ran into him and what it has offered to my life and affected me in ways that I wouldn't have even been able to say, to have that support and to be able to have someone to talk with and to learn how to talk, I think was a huge part of it.
Might consciously forget some of the lessons you learned, but you don't forget them. Like the things that we all ended up learning in grief group and a lot of the things that we worked through, those stay with you. I mean, we're all here in our, you know, mid-30s talking about, you know, the ways that it's still, you know, working in our lives. So it works.
Definitely. Well, I think we're done. Are we?
Shall we all wave?
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to